Welcome back to my YouTube channel. We have another one breakdown of me becoming a Momotaro or a Momotaro from the anime Tougen Anki. So first of all, you all know how we do it. First of all, our main footage, just simply me trying to aura farm, as you can see. Then I bring out my hand and then boom, I release it. Now with this footage ready, first thing I actually did was I went into Fusion. First thing I actually did was I went into Fusion and then where is it? I magic maxed myself out of the background. That was the first thing I actually did. So I went into Fusion and magic maxed myself out of the background. Then I exported this, and this is what we take into Blender. So let's hop into Blender. Let's go. So here we are in Blender, and I brought in, let me show you guys the first things first. I brought in this footage that I maxed myself. Where is it? Let's change this. Yeah. I brought in this footage that I maxed myself, that I did the magic max as a footage. And this is a trick I use. A trick I use in Blender, especially when you shoot with a still camera. You can still do this with a moving camera, but it's like, you need a little more logic. This Ian Hubert game now, I want to put you guys on. So when I put my still camera, I kind of like match my camera to how it looks with a human model and try and match perspective with my camera dimensions I took note of. After I've done all that matching, then I bring in my footage as a plane, and then what I do is I select my footage, then I select my camera, and then I press Ctrl A and not Ctrl A, Ctrl C. Yes, Ctrl C. And then I copy location and press Ctrl C again and copy rotation. But you need to have this copy attribute add-on on. So to have it on, you go to edit, preference, then extensions. I think it's in the extensions tab. Then I think you can search for copy attributes here in the extension. Yes, and you can get the copy attributes extension. So now that we've done that, after you've done that, you copy. Then after you have copied it, so let's say you copy, let me just show you guys for example. Ctrl C, copy location. You can see where it goes to. Ctrl C, copy rotation. The rotation is already copied. So now that it's copied, what you have to do is you now carry this copied location and rotation, and then you press G and Z and Z. So now it's moving on its local Z axis, if I'm saying it correctly. And then you push it back to where you are in actual 3D space. You push this footage back to where you are in actual 3D space, because this footage is going to act like a max or different kind of things for reflection and everything. So you push this footage to where you are in actual 3D space and then you leave it. So let's just Ctrl Z that, since we've already done that. So footage ready, done. First thing, our first particle simulation. This is not a tutorial, so I can't even go in there, but let me just tell you guys something, that this particle simulation made me go through hell. So we have our first particle simulation, which is 5,000 particles. And you can see it starts way further. So that by the time the footage starts, it will already be full, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I couldn't just put, so normally what some people do is like, they will change, if you look here, these particles, this thing, they will change the frame start to like minus something. But if I change it to minus, there's no way I can preview it because my timeline can't go into the minus range. As you can see down here, my timeline can't go into the minus range. So I won't be able to preview all how the particle looks until 0. So I have to always bake to preview it. And I needed to be seeing this real time. So that's why I had to push my footage further and then start the simulation further from 1. And so I had to push my footage further to start at frame 240. So we basically have 2 particle sims. So we have 2 particle sims going because one goes and then we need another one to supplement the one that is at the under that has gone further, because trust me, Blender particle sim is headache. But anyways, I created a spiral geometry, a spiral curve, and then I made it into a force field. So let's see that. How do I show you guys? Yeah, so I created this spiral and I made it into a force field, which is this. Settings are here. It will see the whole game of simulation is you press, you check, and you adjust your parameters. You adjust your parameters, you check, you adjust your parameters. So after adjusting, we had this, and we had 2 particle simulation. One starts earlier than the other. just to make sure that everywhere is full till practically the end. And that is how we have this aura effect, first of all, that has like the beaming particle aura out of me. So let's go into Fusion and let me show you how that is integrated. So here we are in Fusion. And then we have the first particle render, I believe, is this. Yes. So this is the first particle render. And I just brought it in. So with that footage we have in Blender here, with this plain footage that is already marked from our magic mark, what I do is I turn it into a holdout, and yeah, once I turn it into a holdout, when I render, any particle that is behind me, my footage is already going to hold it out, so it's going to block it. So it's already perfectly maxed, if that's what I would say. So that's why I first did like the whole exporting of me cut out of the background into Blender and did the whole copy location and copy rotation P to match the camera. Now you get that. I hope I'm making sense. So yeah, we now have this particle just basically put here, and that's all. We just did some color correction, added Gaussian blur, you understand? And I rendered this with motion blur from Blender, and this is very important because when you use the vector motion blur, if what I'm saying is correct, is it only works on vector basis, so it can only go on the X and Y axis. It doesn't have curved motion blur. So if my object is curving, vector motion blur doesn't understand and it messes it up. And again, these are tiny particles moving rapidly, so vector motion blur is going to get basically confused and kind of just give me a blur of rubbish. So that's why I rendered motion blur out from Blender. So we have this, and then with the same particles we have, I created shadows. So I just made them black. Sorry, let me be putting them here. So with the same particles, I made them black, and then I added Gaussian blur to create shadows, which is the shadows we kind of have on my cloth. And then in the merge node, I kind of like reduce the intensity of the shadow. If I increase it, you can see the shadows. So, which is basically the shadows I have on my cloth. Now we go into the next phase, which is me creating the gun. So let's go back into Blender. So here we are in Blender, and then we have the guns. So let's bring the big guns, as they will say. We have the guns. Let me hide this particle scene. And basically what the guns are is just guns. So I got guns from Sketchfab, I think. And then I just duplicated guns. And yeah. So now what is happening is each gun has its own particle system. So this gun is a force field. You select the gun, you go into your physics, make it a force field, you make it into surface. So each gun is a force field on surface. And then what I've done here is I have a particle sim, which are these small circles, basically at the back of the gun. So these particle sims come after the whole this here, and boom, you can see they emit, and because of the force field, they kind of follow the gun. So because of the force field, the particle sims I have follow the gun. So basically the same particle sim, they follow the gun. And then what I have done is, as the particle sim follow the gun, in the material of the gun, in the shader material of the gun, what I've done is I've added a transparency node. So let's go into shading. And let me show you guys what I mean. In the shader node of the guns, this is what I have done. I had basically animated their opacity. So here we are in the shader node of the gun. I added a gradient texture to the alpha of the gun texture. That is so that I can kind of animate the opacity. So with this gradient texture and this mapping node, I animate the opacity to kind of follow the particles that are emitting. So as the particle emits, I animate this property to move the gradient. So it's moving the gradient. So let me just show you guys basically what is going on here. So as the particle emits, as you can see, the black and white, it is moving the gradient. So where it's black will be where the gun will appear, and where it's white is going to be transparent. So as the particle is moving, I animate this to move the gradient, to kind of move the opacity so that it looks like the gun is formed with the particle. So the particle is moving, the gun is forming. And that is basically how that effect was made in Blender. And with that, I rendered that and straight back into DaVinci Resolve Fusion. And I just slapped that on top, as you can see. Let me show you guys it alone. I just slapped that on top here, and then the gun comes out after the particle comes out. And the rest, as they will say, is history. And basically, yep, that's how this one was created. Quite hectic for me, but if I could do it again, I think I would do it way faster, because now I kind of like have the principles locked down. There's this saying that you are only ready to do a work after you have done it. That's the saying. Yeah, so basically now that you have done it, you already know everything that needs to be done. So if you do it again, it's kind of going to be a breeze. So yeah, that's basically how I did this one. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, and yep, the final VFX.